I've been covering politics and the Constitution for more decades than I care to count. And let me tell you, every now and then, a piece of plain truth comes along that cuts through all the Washington fog like a hot knife through butter. Today we're diving deep into the Federalist Papers. Those essays our founding fathers wrote to sell the Constitution to a skeptical American people back in 1787 and 1788. And what they reveal about the right to keep and bear arms? Well, it's the unvarnished foundation of the Second Amendment, laid out before the Bill of Rights even existed. This isn't some modern spin. These are the receipts straight from Hamilton and Madison themselves. They talk about an armed citizenry as the ultimate safeguard against tyranny, a deep distrust of standing armies, and why free people must never be disarmed. But here's the kicker. In 2025, we've got politicians and bureaucrats acting like that right is up for negotiation. Stick with me through this. By the end, I'll show you the hidden truth they're trying to bury and why it matters more today than ever. Let's start with the plain facts straight from the horse's mouth. These Federalist Papers were written to convince everyday Americans to ratify the new Constitution. No Bill of Rights yet, mind you. That came later in 1791. But Hamilton, Madison, and the boys didn't hold back on why a free republic needs its citizens armed to the teeth. Listen to this from Federalist No. 29. Penned by Alexander Hamilton himself. He says the goal for the people at large is, quote, to have them properly armed and equipped, end quote. Not some elite government unit, the people at large, and he ties it right to avoiding dangerous standing armies. If you want liberty without a permanent military breathing down your neck, the people must stay armed and ready. Hamilton calls the militia the body of the people, not a name-only outfit, but folks who can assemble, train, and function when needed. Then flip over to Federalist No. 46 by James Madison. He's explaining why tyranny's harder to pull off in America than in Europe, and he drops this bombshell. Americans have, quote, the advantage of being armed, which we possess over nearly every other nation. This isn't about duck hunting on Saturday morning, folks. Madison means a political advantage, a structural barrier against government overreach. Pair that with strong state governments and local militias, and you've got layers of resistance that make tyrants think twice. Over in Federalist No. 28, Hamilton gets even blunter. If representatives betray the people, the only resource left is, quote, that original right of self-defense, paramount to all man-made government. That's a natural right that exists before and above the state, and it assumes the people have arms to exercise it. And don't get me started on their terror of standing armies. In Papers 8, 24, and 25, Hamilton quotes state declarations warning that standing armies are dangerous to liberty in peacetime. The founders saw them as a temptation for power grabs, so the counterweight? An armed populace ready to form the militia. What jumps out at me is how clear this all is. No hedging, no footnotes saying, except for this restriction or that zone. The founders assumed the people would keep arms as a birthright. I've been around long enough to know when something smells fishy. And today's talk of common sense limits sure don't match what these men laid down. One has to ask if this rings true with what history books teach us. Now let's roll up our sleeves and ask the question I always ask. Who benefits from forgetting all this? Because, friends, the Federalist Papers aren't some dusty relic. They're a roadmap showing exactly why the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Hamilton and Madison weren't dreaming up some collective-only right for a government-selected militia. No, sir. They describe the militia as drawn from the whole body of the people, everyday farmers, shopkeepers, and tradesmen with their own firearms. Hamilton wanted them armed, equipped, and drilled regularly. Madison called it an advantage that deters ambition before it starts, and both saw disarming the people as the first move of any tyrant. Just look at Europe, they said. But here's where my blood starts to boil. In our day, we've got agencies and politicians behaving like the right to keep and bear arms is a privilege they dole out. Background checks here, age limits there, no carry zones everywhere. The historical record calls it straight. The founders never said only certain folks get this right, or you can't have it in this building or that sidewalk for safety. They built the republic on the assumption that free people stay armed, period. Think about it like protecting your homestead back in the day. You didn't ask permission to keep a rifle by the door in case of trouble. It was common sense. Same here. These papers reveal the hidden agenda today. Slow erosion of a foundational liberty by folks who distrust the people more than they distrust government power. The founders flipped that script entirely. They distrusted concentrated power and trusted armed citizens. And Hamilton's warning in Federalist 84? He resisted a Bill of Rights at first, fearing listing rights might imply government had powers it didn't. But the people demanded it anyway. And thank goodness, because now we've got that explicit lock, shall not be infringed. Yet bureaucrats act like it's negotiable. It's slower than molasses in January how they chip away, but chip they do. I've seen this playbook before. Promise safety, deliver control. The deep suspicion of standing armies? Today we've got a massive permanent military-industrial complex, and the counterweight the founders counted on is under constant attack. Who benefits? Those who want power without accountability. This ain't left or right. It's up versus down. The elites versus the rest of us hard-working Americans. Now let's look down the road. Because if we don't heed these founding warnings, we're headed for trouble that no election alone can fix. The Federalist Papers paint a clear picture. Liberty survives when government knows the people aren't helpless. An armed citizenry isn't about starting fights. It's the ultimate deterrent, like a strong fence making burglars think twice before hopping your property line. Madison said, if Europeans had our advantages, arms plus local governments, every throne of tyranny would collapse in a hurry. But fast forward to 2025. We've got politicians flip-flopping more than fish on a dock, agencies writing rules like they're lawmakers, and a culture pushing the idea that self-defense is outdated or extreme. If we keep letting them redefine well-regulated as heavily restricted, or pretend the militia clause erases the people's right, we're handing tyrants the playbook the founders feared. The consequences? A slow slide into dependency, where protection comes only from the state, and dissent gets risky. Standing armies were the founders' nightmare because history showed they prop up ambition. Today, replace army with bureaucracy or surveillance state. And the threat's the same. Power without real checks. My hard-hitting verdict? The Second Amendment isn't going anywhere. It's part of what makes America America. But if good folks stay silent while it's nibbled away, we'll wake up one day wondering how we lost what our ancestors fought to secure. The receipts are there in black and white. Federalist Papers, free online or in print. Read them yourself. Share them with neighbors who think this right fell from the sky without context. We don't need more hot air. We need education, resolve, and vigilance. The founders trusted us to keep the flame of liberty burning. Let's not let them down. The system's got its flaws. Lord knows we've seen plenty. But we're here to shine a light on the truth and keep fighting for what our founders built. We need to decide if modern restrictions line up with what the founders intended, or if we are drifting way off course.